Hello and welcome to another episode of the Real EFL Preview Show with me, your host, Gary Hutchinson, who apparently needs a haircut. This is the show where we look ahead to the 3 weekend fixtures that we think are worth discussing, and we take a look back at any big news stories from last week. There's few bigger than Steve Evans, quite literally, and that's where we'll start our show. But before we do, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more great EFL content. We are here every week. Now, Steve Evans feels a little bit like a two-man job to me, so let's bring in my partner in crime, EFL expert Kyle Keneally, who's going to help me pick over the bones of his Rotherham career. Kyle, first of all, how are you, my friend?
I'm very well, thank you. I feel like I've had quite a busy-ish week. I've got university deadlines coming up, so it's that time of year where it feels like I've finished incredibly early. In terms of uni at the moment, but I've got stuff that I need to crack on with, and that's what I'll be spending probably most of the next few days doing. So not a break from football as such. There's always football around. As I was at Derby Preston last night, I was at Lincoln on Tuesday evening, but yeah, I feel like uni's got to take the main bit of my priority at the moment.
Well, football's certainly taken up all my time. I was at the Lincoln game as well on Tuesday night, painted the penalty spot as the match ball sponsor. There's been plenty to write about in the Football League this week. And for fear of running over, because we've had to cut content in the previous weeks, we'll get straight onto it. We'll cut out the witty banter and we'll go into something absolutely deadly serious that I absolutely 100% did not laugh my little ginger nipples off at when it happened. So the big news this week, Rotherham United dismissing Steve Evans. The pantomime villain Baron Greenback has gone. He's now looking for another job. Rotherham, huge, factually, this is huge underachievers this season. A really toxic atmosphere. Crawley put 4 past them. That's cost Evans his job. What were your initial thoughts after you stopped laughing?
Well, I mean, it's been coming, I feel, for a really long time. In terms of, I thought, you go back to November, I think I've alluded to it a fair few times when they lost to Barnes, and it felt really toxic at that point. They stuck with him. There was a point as well in December when they played Lincoln. Had they lost that night, they'd have dropped into the relegation zone. And I thought at that sort of time was when they were going to get rid of him. They didn't. The form did slightly improve a bit. They sit 15th in the table now. We're on 48 points. They've got nothing to play for the rest of the season. And yeah, losing against Crawley at the weekend in the manner that they did. The results prior to that hadn't been great. They had a couple of wins to start the month. I think they beat Bristol Rovers, Leyton Orient as well, losing at Wrexham, and then, as I said, I think they lost to Wycombe, and then the game against Crawley at the weekend, losing 4-0 to a team that are in the relegation zone. I know that obviously Scott Lindsay has had a very good impact since he has come in. Not so much on Tuesday night. I know they got beat in another thrilling game with Peter. I think both games this season between them sides have ended up 4-3. But yeah, I wasn't surprised at all to see this. It is always the thing that I say, the timing, perhaps a little bit. As I say, I feel like there were periods earlier on in the season where he definitely felt like he should have gone, but it was always going to be toxic with that result of the weekend. And yeah, it made sense, to be fair.
I think it's tough from a Lincoln fan's perspective because we do have history with Evans. The little digs are not anything new, going all the way back to kind of 2001, 2002 when he was first at Boston. He was somebody that was irritating Lincoln fans. So it is a 2.5 decade soured love affair. But as Lincoln City fans, we've also seen the other side of him this season, beating us twice. So no matter how badly they've done, the Millers will always have that. So we talk about timing there. I find that quite interesting because I think this is the right time to dismiss a manager, not the wrong time. Predominantly because it now gives them time to get a replacement in before the end of the season so that they're not then messing about through May and June and their transfer plans don't go completely awry. There will be an overhaul. The squad is the squad that Steve built and then criticised every single week whenever one of them made an individual mistake. Before we look at Rotherham, do you see a way back into football for Steve Evans now?
I don't, to be honest. I think this is his time up. And when I spoke about time in that, I kind of meant there were times earlier on in the season where I thought he'd been more likely to have been sacked rather than now. As I say, losing 4-0 at home to Crawley was never going to come back from it. Really, it felt like the moment where everything had completely fallen. As I say, I know they've had a really poor season. But yeah, I don't see him coming back quite now. I don't know how old he actually is. But he's been in football for a fairly long time now. He's had his success in the past. His management style is obviously a style that feels quite outdated now, and it's not brought success this time. And it leaves Rotherham in quite a difficult position in the summer, as you say. The fact now they've got a few games or a little bit of time before the window opens to get a new manager in, but it does feel like the squad's going to have to be fairly transformed because they signed a lot of players in the summer, a lot on sort of free transfers, maybe only a couple of years. But it feels like they have a lot of work to do to get out of League One next year. You're obviously going to lose Birmingham. They might be losing Wrexham. So it does look like it'll be a potentially easier division next year. So there is definitely a chance they can turn themselves around again and potentially push towards the playoffs. But it's going to require a lot of work to do.
So Steve Evans is 62 now. I still think there'll be a club willing to take a risk on him in League Two. It's whether he chooses to get back into football or not, because I think he's got the sort of style that will galvanise a smaller club. And my underlying observations of Steve Evans are when you put him in a club with not a lot of money and tell him to work his magic, he works his magic. When you give him a war chest to spend, he struggles. And I think that's classic. He did really well with Gillingham in League One, where financially they wouldn't be as competitive as Mansfield were in League Two when he was there and he couldn't do it. It's the same with Leeds. He was against the odds with Rotherham a little bit in his first spell there. So I still think, as much as it pains me, he has qualities that he can transfer to another club. Not to Rotherham, but Rotherham still go on. There is life for the Millers after Steve Evans, and I personally won't dislike them as much as I have done. So there you go, Millers fans. This weekend they host Blackpool, Steve Bruce's Blackpool, another 60-something manager. Now, with Rotherham, obviously, Matty Hamshaw got a winning start as interim boss on Tuesday evening. Do you give them any chance of getting a positive result out of this one?
Well, I think it's going to be a really difficult game. We'll come on to Blackpool in a minute, but I was delighted to see Matt Hamshaw get the job. I know it's only on an interim basis, but he's a Rotherham fan. He was born in Rotherham. I know he's worked there in various coaching capacities before, I think just after he'd retired. He's worked with Paul Warne, obviously quite recently. He was Derby interim boss as well when Warne had actually left. And I think perhaps when he was announced as interim boss till the end of the season, there was a little bit about, is this set up for Paul Warne to come back to Rotherham? But this obviously hasn't been the case. And I think it's good for him to get in there. I know obviously long term, I don't think that is going to be the approach that they go for. But yeah, I certainly think it's a good decision in the meantime. You've got someone who knows the club. These are the type of interim appointments that I think make sense. But as I say, it's a very, very difficult game at the weekend. Beating Northampton on Tuesday night was a good result. And hopefully now for the rest of the season for them, they've got nothing to play for. So it just gives them a chance to have a bit of a connection back with the club again. I'm not saying Steve Evans completely took that away, but I know a lot of fans will have been disillusioned with his style of play, with his sort of attitude to the club. And I know he was a legend there before, but things have just soured massively. So as I say, it gives them a chance to refine their love for the club for at least the next few weeks.
Now, a fan base that refound their love for the club a few years ago when they were taken over were Blackpool. And the job that Steve Bruce has done there has actually been quite commendable because they are a medium-sized fish in a pond full of sharks. Now, they've come from mid-table. They're now 9th in League One. That's only 3 points outside the playoffs, albeit having played a game more than the 3 teams above them. But they've actually won. They've lost 10 games. 4 of the teams above them have lost either equal to or more than that, including 2 that are actually inside the top 6. So they've become a real part of this kind of playoff conversation from nowhere. Do you think that they can continue that excellent form in South Yorkshire and possibly put themselves into contention?
Yeah, I think they can do. You look at the clubs that are in contention at the moment. We obviously mentioned Huddersfield very briefly earlier. I don't think there's any chance that they make the playoffs after Tuesday night. They seem a club that are completely, as I've mentioned, there with Rotherham, they're completely disillusioned with their ownership more so at the moment. They don't look a great side at all. They didn't have a shot on target on Tuesday night, which says it all. They spent big. There were many people's favourites, but they don't look like a side that will finish in the top 6 this season. If they do, they've got no chance of going up. And as I say, I don't think, for starters, that they will finish in the top six. There is a chance here for a club to come. Bolton obviously beat Wigan on Tuesday night, a really big result. I think it was their first win against their local rivals in 10 years. And I think I mentioned a couple of months ago, they were the side that I had backed to finish when, and then the manager had come in. But yeah, Blackpool aside that had a little bit of a run earlier in the season. I think, again, before they played Lincoln, I think they drew themselves into playoff contention. They slipped off a little bit, and they've been in mid-table for a while. But beating Reading in midweek was a really big result. The manner as well, winning 3-0. The side seems really settled. Funnily enough, I do programme writing for Rotherham, and I do the away section. And it was a really easy write for looking at their side, because they've just been so settled. Their front six players, I think, have started fairly regularly for weeks. The only real alterations have come at centre half. As I say, the form's been really good as well. They've won 3 games in a row. They beat Bolton actually at the weekend, which was a really big result. And again, beating Reading, another side in playoff contention. 2 really, really big games. A win against Northampton as well. And weirdly, there were some similarities with Rotherham's result in midweek. They were both 2-0 wins, and the goal scorers came at pretty identical points. Completely irrelevant, but it was just something I noticed when I was having a look. They've got 5 wins in their last 6. Their only loss was to Leighton Orient. Again, we're another team in playoff contention. Just to touch on their home form, I know this game is at Rotherham, but when they beat Crawley at the end of February, they'd drawn 8 straight games before that, but they've finally turned it round at home. And that's going to be crucial towards the end of their season. They've got Birmingham as one of their last home games. I think they're home to Bristol Rovers on the final day. And they have a little bit of a break after this game, owing to the EFL Trophy final. They're meant to play Birmingham next weekend, but obviously Birmingham play Peterborough in the EFL Trophy final. They've got Wrexham as well on Easter Monday, which feels a really, really big game. And it could be really massive for both teams. But yeah, I certainly think they're a team that can be considered in playoff contention at the moment.
Now, just looking at League One, it's actually been really interesting over the last 6 games. There isn't a single team with an unbeaten run that extends beyond 5 games. Birmingham lost 6 games ago, Wrexham 5 games ago, Wycombe 4 games ago, and it just goes on. Everybody's lost games, so it is pretty much of a muchness. And as you say, looking at the table, you could argue anyone from Leighton Orient on 59 points, all the way up to Bolton in 6th on 63 points, are in contention for the last playoff spot. You've got Wycombe, Charlton, Stockport, Wrexham and Birmingham are pretty much going to be the top 5. So quick prediction from you: Bolton, Reading, Huddersfield, Blackpool, Orient. Who takes the final playoff spot?
I think it'll be one of Bolton or Blackpool, and I'm going to go with Bolton.
Okay, I think Bolton as well. And we're not particularly talking about the bottom, but it has really heated up down there now. Burton Albion's form has certainly been impressive. They've won 2 of their last 3. Bristol Rovers have lost 4 on the spin. Northampton are without a win in 4. You would think Crawley are down on 36. They are 6 points clear of safety. But you've got Burton there, 39 games, 39 points. Game in hand of Bristol Rovers, who are 3 points above them with a worse goal difference, and game in hand of Northampton, 4 points above them on a worse goal difference. Who goes down?
See, had Crawley won in midweek, I would certainly have given them a chance. As you say, I think it's too far now, really. They've got to get results on the board. I'm going to back Burton to stay up, and as a result, I'm going to back Bristol Rovers to go down.
Well, Rovers are away. They've got an away game at Bolton. They've got an away game at Wrexham. They host Reading. And then on the final game of the season, they're away at Blackpool. I can't see them picking up all that many points. Now, Burton have got a tough run. They've got Wrexham away. We're not going to call Huddersfield at home tough. They've then got Birmingham at home. But they also play Cambridge at home. They also play Wigan at home. I think they can pick up enough points. I'm going to agree with you. I think Bristol Rovers are in the deep brown stuff. Now, another team in the deep brown stuff as we look down into League Two are Morecambe, but they have given themselves a real fighting chance. So they're 23rd in the table at the moment, but back-to-back wins. And let's be honest, unexpected back-to-back wins. And they've won, by the way, 3 of their last 6, have hauled them to within 4 points of Tranmere Rovers, who have also won 3 of their last 6. And Accrington have fallen probably a little bit too late to be caught by Morecambe. This weekend, Morecambe go to, and I'm going to say our friends with a wry smile on my face, they go to our friends Grimsby Town, who are 7th and angling for a playoff place. We're not going to talk about anybody else involved in the playoffs in League Two, particularly a team I backed for automatics who have since lost 2 or 3 on the spin. But Grimsby, they suffered a big setback in their aspirations of a playoff place in midweek, allowing competitors to close the gap. Do you think that they take the final playoff spot?
It's really, really difficult at the moment. League Two as a whole. I wanted to stay away from the automatic promotion race this week because I feel like we've spoken about it for weeks and it is so unpredictable. There was a point I took a screenshot of the table on Tuesday evening. I think it was when Wimbledon were winning at this point. I think Doncaster had just gone 2-1 up against Walsall, and I'm certain there were 3 points between the top 5 or something ridiculous. And obviously Notts County won last night as well, so they've pulled themselves back in. The playoff race though as well, it looks really, really tight at the moment. I don't know who to back at the moment. I would have said Grimsby. That win against Colchester last Friday was absolutely massive. They'd responded from a couple of defeats as well. I think they'd lost to, that's what I had it down. Yes, they lost to Salford and Notts County in the middle of March, but they beat Newport, and then that win against Colchester was huge. But losing to Crewe on Tuesday night has pulled the Alex back in as well. You've got Chesterfield in there as well, who look in really, really good form. They had 38 shots on Tuesday evening against Carlisle. I could not believe it when I was looking at the stats on this one. Carlisle reduced to 10 men. Elliot Embleton, I think, was sent off in the 40th minute. They needed a couple of late-ish goals to get the 3 points. I would back Chesterfield at the moment. I genuinely think they've got a good chance. They've got players that I think have come back from injury. They're in good form. They're also the side coming from nowhere in a way. And am I right in saying they have a game in hand?
They do have a game in hand over some. So Chesterfield, the 10th, played 39 on 58 points. And then above them, Colchester played 40, 1 point more. Crewe played 43 points more. And Grimsby 44 points more.
Yeah, so that certainly helps. I think that game in hand is next week. I can't quite remember. It might be Gillingham. I think it
is Gillingham, yeah.
Yeah, I think they went to play them over Christmas. And that is obviously a tough game. You've got Gareth Ainsworth in there now. I think they've had a couple of draws since he's come in. But yeah, I'd back them at the moment. They've been a little bit inconsistent throughout the course of the season. I think this is sort of the place a lot of people had expected them to finish. And if they don't go this year, and even if they do make the playoffs, I don't think they're going to go up. There'll be a side next season to look out for. But it's going to be an absolutely fascinating last few weeks of the League Two season.
Well, Chesterfield have it in their own hands for me because they play Wimbledon on Friday the 18th. They're at home to Bradford on Monday the 21st. They do play Morecambe and they do play Tranmere in that little run as well, and the final game of the season against Accrington. So they've got 2 of their playoff rivals, but they also play 3 of the bottom 4. Now, while we're talking about the bottom 4, we were talking about Grimsby. They host Morecambe. They looked dead and buried a few weeks ago, but they've pulled it round. They've had a couple of decent results, back-to-back wins. Lee Angol inspiring them there, a former Lincoln City misfit. Do they have enough to pull off a great escape?
I don't know at the moment. It's so tough to call. As you say, they've pulled themselves into contention. They beat Wimbledon earlier on in March and then wins over Cheltenham and Swindon. Not massively unexpected results in terms of the opposition they were playing. They're not massive upsets in terms of the standings, at least. But winning 2 games back-to-back at this point of the season is absolutely huge. It's just a shame that Tranmere have started to turn their form around at the same time. They've had a couple of good results. They did lose to Harrogate, though, on Tuesday night, which has kind of helped Harrogate move a little bit further clear. And just looking at Tranmere's form, I think they were unbeaten in March. They had a run of 3 wins from 4. They beat Bromley, that massively surprise result at Bradford, when I think they hadn't won away since October. Bradford had won something like 8 games in a row. I think it might have been more. And they beat Cheltenham as well, like Morecambe did. Morecambe still have Carlisle to play next weekend. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. What looked a really big game at the time. Carlisle are obviously all but down now. I think they're 9 points adrift. They've got Bromley and Salford over Easter, a couple of teams who are unlikely to have much to play for the rest of the season. Then, as you say, I think they've got Chesterfield as their penultimate game, and then Harrogate on the final day. So there are quite a few winnable games in there that they will certainly target getting results from. And if they can, they will give themselves a very, very good chance of staying in the division.
So did you answer the question as to whether you think they'll stay in the division or not, Kyle? Because I don't think you did.
I don't know if I ever answered it. Yeah, do you know what I do? I do think they'll stay up. I just think, as I say, with them final games, I think that there are enough chances for them to get points on the board. They have to win. Perhaps not on the weekend. It's going to be a really difficult game at Grimsby, but they need to beat Carlisle next week to give themselves half a chance. And obviously, they'll be looking at Tranmere's results to see what they do, and perhaps Accrington.
So it's our first disagreement, but I think Tranmere stay up. They've lost one of the last 6. The same day we discussed this, the same day that Carlisle play Morecambe, Tranmere go to Accrington, who could be dragged into it if their form continues. But Tranmere have also got Newport to play, who will have nothing to play for, Barrow to play, who will have nothing to play for as well. And I think that they will have enough now to stay in the division. And I think it will be a brave fight by Morecambe, but I think that they could well be visiting Wealdstone or Boston next season. Let's move on to the Championship. It's not very often you get a Football League show where we'll talk about Morecambe before we talk about Leeds United, but that's the Real EFL for you. We'll talk about in whatever order we want to. And we are talking about a team in second in the Championship in Leeds United, desperate to get their place back in the Premier League. And they travel to Luton Town, who are 23rd in the division. They were Premier League last season. They have had an abhorrent season. They've had an awful season. They're staring at back-to-back relegations. They are just finding a little bit of form, though, aren't they, Luton? I think that they've won 3 of their last 6. They're unbeaten in their last 3. But the sides around them have done the same. Are the Hatters going to stay up?
Yeah, well, the tide has turned a little bit for a few of the clubs. Derby last night, winning for the 4th game in a row. They've hit form at a perfect time. Plymouth at the moment are the side that they kind of look dead and buried. But Luton have given themselves a chance massively at the moment. Their game against Portsmouth on the 1st of March. Matt Bloomfield had obviously come in a little bit before that. I think this was his 8th game in charge. Had yet to win. Luton themselves hadn't won in 2025. It was a massive 1-0 win. And I know they went the next weekend and lost at Burnley, not helped by a stupid red card, really. I think Kyle Naismith was sent off after 20 minutes for a couple of bookings, ended up losing 4-0. Again, being at Burnley, and Burnley had finally started to hit a bit of form in front of goal as well. Not a massive surprise, but it's the results against Cardiff and against Hull in their last games that have really given themselves a chance at the moment of staying up. There was a frustrating draw as well in there with Middlesbrough, a game I think which they were dominant in, and obviously you've got a Middlesbrough side that are looking to finish in the playoffs. So again, if you're not going to lose, if you're not going to win a game, at the moment, it's important to get points, and they will fancy themselves a little bit the weekend. Leeds have dropped off a little bit. We'll get onto them in a minute. But there's certainly a chance for them to get a result there. And if you look at their games after that, again, they've got teams around them. They've got Stoke in midweek. They've got Derby on Good Friday. Again, against Blackburn in between are out of form. It's their final games that look really tough. Bristol City on Easter Monday. They've got Coventry again at home on the penultimate weekend of the season. And then West Brom away. So there are 3 teams all chasing or all potentially chasing a playoff spot. So there are games that obviously both teams may have something to play for, which makes it really, really challenging for them. I don't know whether they'll have enough to stay up. I think Derby have seemingly pulled themselves out of it at the moment. They're only just outside the relegation zone, but as I say, off the back of them 4 wins, you'd certainly back them at the moment. I don't know who else goes down at the moment. It is really, really tough to call.
I am going to break some hearts of the Oxford United supporters because I think they may get dragged into it. The news today about their stadium lease being up is certainly got not good news. But you look at some of the fixtures they've got coming up. They host Sheffield United this weekend. QPR not so tough. They go to Sheffield Wednesday at a time when Wednesday will probably still have a little bit of something to play for. They then host Leeds United. They've also got Sunderland to come to the Kassam. So these two games that they've got against Cardiff on Easter Monday and Swansea on the last game of the season are going to be absolutely huge. They've lost 4 of their last 6 games. They've lost 17 games, which is the same as Cardiff. I can actually see it being Plymouth, Cardiff and Oxford United going down. And I think it's been a brave fight by Oxford, but they do feel to me like that team that have come up, given it a bit of a go, but just not enough of a go. Now, we'll move on to what would normally be the main event. We'll tag on to the end, and it's Leeds United. Now, all the talk surrounding Leeds has been about Meslier, the keeper. We even did an article on the Real EFL that if they go up, they have got to get rid of him. And if they don't go up, it will be his fault. And it probably will be, because he's cost them a few points. Daniel Farker has today revealed that he will be dropping the calamity keeper, and Carl Darlow will be coming in on Saturday. How does that affect the game? And more importantly, how does it affect Meslier?
I think you just have to take him out the firing line at the moment. I think it's a bit of an understatement saying he's cost them a few points. Leeds, for me, are by far the best team in the division this season, but Meslier has cost them a hell of a lot of points, if we're honest. I've never been confident watching him. The game against Sheffield United, I think, at the end of February, just the balls into the box. He never filled me with confidence as a keeper. I mean, if you look at some of the mistakes he's made, it is almost unforgivable at this point of the season, particularly at the weekend. They had a chance, obviously, to return to the top of the table. They looked on course for that, but it was his 2 mistakes, including that one in the 98th minute that was probably... that's at least cost them top spot for now. It leaves them level on points with Burnley. It leaves them behind Sheffield United at the moment. And Leeds have just started to crumble a little bit. I still think they'll go on and get promoted purely because Burnley play Sheffield United. But both of them teams are in really, really good form at the moment. I think Burnley are something like 26 games unbeaten at the moment. That was one of the last times I watched them live, though, when they lost against Millwall. Back in November, and I will see them in action against Derby on Tuesday night. So they may lose again purely by me being there. I'm clearly a bad omen for them. But yeah, I really think that Leeds will go on and get automatic promotion. Their running looks slightly better than the other 2 clubs. As I say, Burnley and Sheffield United play each other, which means at least one of the sides will drop points. That day, earlier in the day at least, Leeds play Stoke. They've got Bristol City to play as well. Middlesbrough on Tuesday night is another really tough game. They've got Oxford on Good Friday, a late kickoff that day, and then they're at Plymouth on the final day, who will likely be down by that point. I just think there are enough chances there, and I think they'll turn it around. I don't know whether Carl Darlow being in goal will change their fortunes. I think it'll certainly improve them for the moment. It'll provide a little bit of stability. And as I say, it takes Meslier out of the firing line, at least for this game. And if it doesn't go all to plan, then they can obviously bring him back in. But if Leeds go up, they have to buy a new goalkeeper in the summer. I think that goes without saying, whichever division even, if they're in the Premier League or if they're in the Championship next year.
Now, the playoff race, I know we haven't prepared anything for this, and it won't be a long question, but there are 7 teams, or 8 teams rather, within 6 points of each other, all of whom have played the same number of games. West Brom, Middlesbrough, Bristol City on 57, Watford on 53, Norwich, Blackburn and Sheffield Wednesday on 52, and Millwall on 51. It is an absolutely fascinating race for a place in the top 6. At the minute, it's the form side West Brom, who have only lost 1 of their last 6, and Middlesbrough have only lost 1 of their last 6. Bristol City the same. But there's 7 games left to go. All could change. Is there anybody in the pack there that you think has a better chance of joining? Certainly Sunderland and Burnley, and potentially Coventry, who are on 59, in the top 6. What's your predictions? Pick me 2 teams to join Sunderland, Burnley, Leeds and Sheffield United in the top 6.
No, I'm going to straight away discount Sheffield Wednesday and Blackburn. Blackburn are in awful form. Norwich have seemingly, I think they won the weekend, but they fell out of it. Same with Watford. So I think it'll be 2 from Bristol City, Middlesbrough, West Brom and Coventry. I'm going to back Coventry, and I'm going to say Middlesbrough. I think Middlesbrough might sneak that final spot.
You see, I was going to back Middlesbrough and Bristol City potentially to overhaul Coventry and West Brom, but West Brom aren't in bad form. They've only lost 1 of 6. It's just fascinating. It's one of the best championship playoff races I think we've seen in many years. And when you think about the promotion race in League Two as well, they're two fascinating divisions. Kyle, look, we've overrun once again. Thank you so much for your time. So we'll hear from Kyle again next week. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
So there we are, the Real EFL Preview Show. We started with some cheap puns around Steve Evans, then we got right into the meat and gravy of this weekend's fixtures. There's some massive fixtures. We've picked 3, but there are so many. It's going to be an exciting weekend, and it's a great time, by the way, for me to be a Lincoln City fan, because we're not going down, we're not going up, we're Lincoln City, and we don't really care. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this was the Real EFL Preview Show. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and we will be back next week.